All right. Hello and welcome back to the NNP Symposium. I believe everyone here in Schaumburg knows what we're doing, so I will not repeat myself for the 18th time this weekend, and we will get this show on the road. So for this last session of the Spring Symposium, we are joined by Mike Nottelmann, who will be talking about the making of the Coin Show podcast. If you've come to past symposia, we've had the podcast on, I think, every time so far. So they are good friends of ours, and we're happy to have Mike back to talk about something a little different this time. So Mike, you may come on up and I'll let you take it away.
Okay.
I did forget to mention, he is happy to take questions during his presentation. So whereas most of the time, we wait until the end, if you send anything in during the presentation, I will call it out from the audience and go ahead and we'll discuss it then. So you're welcome to send in questions at any time and they'll be answered shortly thereafter. Thank you.
And thank you, Leanna. So, no, I want people to feel comfortable sending questions because this really is kind of meant to be more of an interactive thought. So I wanted to talk about the Coin Show podcast and about what we do and how we go about making it, and maybe, pull back the curtain a little bit on podcasting and what it's done and how it's done. So my talk is entitled The Coin Show Podcast, Making of the Coin Show Podcast, or It's Really Not That Hard to Create Good Content. We have been on a mission over the past year to kind of identify other content creators that put good content out there. We're always looking for people that are trying to educate, that are trying to advance the hobby, and are trying to bring a little something extra. So we are really we're on board with content creators. We like to expand the hobby, and we want to help people in any way that we can. For those who don't know me, my name is Mike Nottelmann. I currently work as a U.S. numismatist at Harlan J. Burke. I've been there 3 years. I am a member of the ANA and the Central States Numismatics Society. I kind of fancy myself as a researcher, writer, educator, but I am also can be verified as a youth bowling coach. I like to teach people. I really do like to educate, and I like to help people out. And I currently publish 2 podcasts. One, of course, the Coin Show podcast, and a second one for those of you who may be into the ancient side of things, called the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Burke. And that's the guy I work for. And, we wanted to do something from the other side of the perspective. So if we're going to talk about podcasting, we really kind of need to understand the orbit in which it lives. So media can be broken down into traditionally 2 different things. You have push and pull. So your push media is radio and TV. You are going to push your message out there, and people are going to consume it because you've put it out there. The internet tends to be more of a pull media situation. So these are people that are going to a platform and they are consuming the content that is listed there. They are actively seeking it out. And so that's a completely different strategy of getting to them. So now with the influx of social media, you have more hybrid. And the hybrid is, like your Netflix, your Hulu, your other streaming sources. Those are hybrid sites. Those, yes, they're putting stuff up there, but you're also going to them and you're pulling it in and you're sampling what you want. Social media sites are a really good example of hybrid media because it not only is something that you can go and you can consume, but it's something that you can publish and you can create with. And a lot of people use social media to spread their content throughout the interwebs. So what is a podcast? I think this is probably the most basic question that we get, and it's really not a silly question. Podcasting is different from normal programming. A podcast technically is an audio only program that is published on the internet, and it sits in a website waiting for you to come, download it, and consume it. in the 10 years that podcasting has really become more mainstream, you're starting to see more and more people that do video podcasts or do a TV show, call it a podcast because it's, someplace where you can go and consume it. But from the real technical standpoint of it, they're not technically podcasts. And the only reason that I mention that is when you start to think about where you find them. So podcasts are not something that you can listen to on the radio. You can't find them on TV. You have to go on the internet. And as we know, the internet can be the Wild West. So just kind of, searching for it, that could be a little scary too. So you have all of these content portals or outlets that are out there. And you have ones like Spotify, iHeartRadio, there is Spreaker, there is iTunes is probably the biggest one out there. God, how could I forget them? So all of these places are places where people go to consume podcasts. The best part about it is that if you want to see what's new in the podcasting world, you just go to iTunes, search new, and it will give you all the podcasts that have just recently been published. And there's podcasts on literally any subject that you could want. There's podcasts on home improvement, there's podcasts on coin collecting, and there's podcasts on personal health issues. I mean, there's virtually anything that you could want. And the amount of structure or the seriousness of the program will kind of vary from show to show. You get people that just have two people, looking at each other, talking about what music they like, and what bands are good. And then you have people like me and Matt, who do something a little bit more like a show, or we're trying to inform and entertain and do it through a more structured format. Consuming podcasts. So how does one go about doing that? Podcasts often are downloaded for later consumption. It is like the binge watching of radio. I have a lot of friends who have in the past told us, we like to listen to your podcast when we're on the road. It's an hour ride. So, we have this podcast that we can listen to, and there it is. And you can go back to it. You can listen to bits and pieces of it. You can play it for your friends. You just download it onto your iPad, your phone, you can go to a website and have it. All of these things make it so that you can access pretty much any podcast that you can think of. So why would I want to listen to a podcast? Here's where I think it gets really interesting, because podcasts offer a very targeted point of view. And I think that that's why they're so popular. If you are a person with an opinion, there may or may not be other people that share that opinion. There may be lots of people that share that opinion. But the one thing that has become more and more prevalent today is that media has fractured us and divided us into these tiny little segments. And so finding people that feel the same way about the same things can be found through targeted media like podcasts. You also will tend to go to podcasts when there are few or no other sources to find your information on. So, for example, and I hate to pick on coin collecting, but it's just not a mainstream issue. So most of the information on coin collecting is done by people in the hobby that really just want to give back, that want to help, and that want to give. And I was talking about fractured media before, where TV programs used to get huge audiences, when it's changed a lot over the last 30 years. But when I was a kid, there were 3 networks. And if you didn't want to watch what was on any of those 3 networks, you were pretty much out of luck. There was no VCR, there was no DVR. It was what was on, and that was your choice, and you just go do something else. And so now kids have 1,000 channels and they still don't find anything to watch. So I don't think that part of it has changed, but the breadth of stuff out there. Now there's a channel for, motorheads. There's a channel out there for people who like home decorating. There's channels. for everything, Food Networks. So, yeah. And so the media landscape is really, really changing. It's becoming much more targeted. Where TV programs used to garner just huge audiences with large percentages of the country watching one of those three programs, today's media is just more choice. And the programming is far more focused and targeted in order to garner more viewership. So they are really going to hype in on the things that you're interested in. They're going to speak your message, or in my case, I'm going to talk about the glory of US coins because that's what I like. And I'm going to educate people as best I can. But there are some other podcasts out there, both private and public, like the Joe Rogan podcast, most people have heard of. It's an opinion podcast, it's entertainment. Joe Rogan has millions of listeners out there, and it's a big deal when he decided to change his podcast from Spotify to, wherever he went. There is The Daily, which is run by the New York Times. NPR has podcasts. So literally, you can have virtually any point of view. It's no longer has to be mainstream, more independent, which, if you look at it from my standpoint, I like more independent voices. Yes, it makes more garbage to sift through to kind of get to your message, but there's more of a chance that you're going to find something out there that resonates. Let's see. A lot of podcasts start out very small. We created the Coin Show podcast out of whole cloth. We just decided three guys, we'd get together every couple of weeks. We would just record us talking about coins, and that's what we were going to do. We started it 13 years ago. But now podcasting has become a thing. You have Jon Stewart has a podcast, which is huge. Joe Rogan has a podcast, which is huge. Coin Week has a podcast. I do two of them, the Ancient Coin podcast, Coin Show podcast. To Be Better is a podcast. There's one on life and dentistry, which is why it's like, seriously, life and dentistry. You want to listen to that? So, and then the binge watching part comes in. So new podcasts may only have 4 or 5 listeners to start, but over time, listeners will go back and they'll listen to the first episodes. Sometimes, in the case of us, it could be kind of embarrassing because you evolve and you learn over time. But most publishers will make all of the episodes available so that you can go and you can download them and you can actually listen to any of them, but they'll always give priority to the latest release. So I give you a frame of our podcast and I say, but all of this looks so complicated. And it's really, really not. I mean, what you see on this screen is just a bunch of effects that we've layered on top of each other in different screens in Photoshop to create something that looks like the TV news that you watch on TV. That's it. There's a chyron here. There's a graphic here. We've made it transparent in the middle so that, and here's the best part. You probably have most of this software on your computer already. You're already set up for podcasting without even knowing it. So we use Zoom, which who doesn't, right? We record our Zoom meetings, and the Zoom meetings put it in the format that makes it look like a podcast. And, and then we can run graphics over the top of it with an absolutely free program like OBS Streamlabs, where you can go in and you can build this stuff and you can make it look any way you want. You create your own backgrounds, create your own theme, your own art. And now all of a sudden, you're a podcaster. And you can go out and pontificate, and you can if I have a rule that if you say enough things, eventually you are going to say something stupid. So it's going to happen. But if you have a good point of view, and if you really are well thought out in what you're doing, people pretty much, they will come to it. The best part about podcasting is that most podcasters have very little or no overhead. Matt and I did a podcast that was audio only for, I think it was 6 years before we went to video. It cost us $20 a month. Total. That was it. We had headsets, we had microphones, we had laptops that had cameras on them. And all we did was, got on and started recording. And some of the first ones were okay, and some of them were not. And, we just kept doing it. We kept growing and we kept getting better. Hosting your podcast is usually going to run you somewhere in the $20, $25 range per month. So that's really kind of your biggest expense. If you want to do something like we do with YouTube, it gets a little bit more complicated because you need a video camera and you need boards and things like that to manage the levels and stuff. But it really doesn't take anywhere near as much as you think. So I put together a little list for you. What does it really take? A point of view. That's, I think, the most important, because without that, nobody's going to want to listen. A microphone. A camera, if you choose. Now, it's like many people, say that I'm just not comfortable being on camera. I don't like the way I look on camera. My mom always told me I had the face for radio. It's any of those reasons, right? A co-host is also optional. You can have somebody to help carry the conversation with you, or somebody to argue with, or somebody to share just a completely different point of view. When Matt and I started doing this, he was a dealer and I was a collector, and we thought that was a really good 2 points of view to come from. And even though I now am working for a coin dealer, we still have that, because we still have the basic enthusiasm that we started with. I'm still enthusiastic about the stuff that he's not, and that's fine. So you need a hosting site, which is minimally expensive, and time. That's it. So for really next to no investment, you can become the authority on whatever it is in your, and do your research, think about what it is that you're going to say, put it out there. But you have probably one of the greatest tools of our lifetime. And it's not regulated overall. It doesn't have a lot of people telling you what you can do, what you can't do, and how you can do it. This is a creator's paradise. And you can really speak any message that you want. That's kind of frightening, but true. Then you have to promote your podcast. So promoting your podcast becomes very easy. We, almost all podcasters that I know of, use social media like Facebook or Twitter. We use Tumblr, we use Reddit, we use Instagram. If there's a place out there, we are on it. And the idea is you just put your message out there. Hey, come click on this, come see, we've released a new video, we've done this. And that's exactly what social media is for. It's for sharing your bits, your information, and your stuff. So I think that's another great tool that's absolutely free. It's just limited to your creativity. But you can also promote through email lists. If you have people that listen and you say, hey, if you want to get my newsletter, email me. We'll put you on our list. We send you our newsletter. That usually works. You can create your own subscription list. There's all kinds of ways to promote podcasts that don't cost a cent. So if you've watched this whole thing, the main cost has been just the hosting of the podcast for a month. Now we got to talk about a different subject. This is what we're up against. So you've heard the term clickbait. Clickbait is one of my favorite things. It's one of everybody's favorite things, because what it is it's something that is going to make you want to click on this, no matter what. They use particularly what's the word? Incendiary language. They use things that are just made to get your attention really fast. So a couple of the examples that I have is one from, Facebook that says pregnant cow has been chased by a gang of teens, passed away. It's like, can you verify this? Why do I care? But it's something that really does kind of get you to look. On the side of your Facebook page, and the thing, there's these sponsored links. Man says that he traveled to the year 2749 for eye-opening claims about, and so that's clickbait. And in the coin business, there's a ton of it out there. You've seen it a million times. It's the guy who says, your penny could be worth $1 million. And it's not. And are they harmful? Yes. Are they destructive? Yes. But can they be used to an advantage of some sort? Maybe. I'm still working on that one. But the thought about it is that there's an old saying that says that no publicity is bad publicity. It's all out there, and you can use it in some way. So that's kind of my mission right now, is trying to figure out a way to turn the people that are getting you to click into finding other ways to make you be able to tell the difference to stuff that you really can see and you will learn something from. Some of you might ask, how do podcasts make money? Because it's funny, you see YouTube, and some of these people on YouTube that make a living doing YouTube videos. They play to an algorithm. YouTube will pay you to advertise on your channel if you have enough viewers and if you meet certain criteria as far as frequency, length of your content, and the literal content of it. YouTube pays people in the thousands of dollars every week just to advertise on their channels. So that's one way that you can do it with podcasts, but you can also do it through subscription. We have a subscription on Facebook. It is just for people that want to donate to the Coin Show podcast. You can subscribe and you can give us money and donate something, but you don't have to. And we kind of like doing it that way. We make it available for free. But if you want to help, it's there and we appreciate it. We use a service called Patreon, but there are other ones out there. There's ones like Coffee, where you can buy somebody, a cup of coffee. There are all these different patron sites where you can put your site up there. It's kind of like a GoFundMe. People go, they subscribe. There are only a couple of rules that you have to follow, like you can't run contests specific to Patreon, stuff like that. But otherwise, a really good way to just monetize your podcast if there's nothing else that's happening. Or the last one I have listed is Build and Sell. And what Build and Sell is you create something that becomes valuable and worth something, and then you sell the product to a buyer that wants it for the content. My best friend in the world is a guy who I like to call Nutsky, and he is always reminding me of the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I think that the internet is a tool that we haven't used in this hobby, in this interest enough, that we do tend to do things the same way over and over and over again. We have shows, we have meetings, we have commercials, we have, but if you start thinking in terms of the way that people consume things and the way that it's changed, now you're going to find some pathways to consumers that will build your business, will build your podcast, will build your listenership, whatever it is that you're trying to build. And you can do it on a shoestring. Really, seriously, on a shoestring. So try doing different things. Try doing things in a different way. Things catch on that way. So how does the hobby benefit from podcasts? Our hobby needs to grow. Our hobby is the what's the word, the thing that they say about us the most. It's old white men, right? Sadly, that's it. So in order for us to get better about that, we have to get younger. We have to attract a younger audience. The best way to do that is go to where younger people go, to where younger people consume, and give it to them in a way that's appealing to them, and form what you do to how they consume it. Always remember your audience. That's the number one rule of writing. Always know who you're speaking to. And so if we can reach out to younger audiences, if we can reach out to a different generation of people, there's a really good chance that our hobby will thrive and will grow. Winter Coin University, I think, is one of the best examples of that, where Seth is out there and he's taking these young numismatists and he's showing them off. I mean, he's polishing them up a little bit, and they're taking the torch and they're running with it. This is a whole new generation. This is a completely different idea. It's something different being done. So we really have to try and to reach this younger generation in different ways, because they're not us. There is a vast audience to be gained from good informational and educational content. There's a good audience to be gained from really lousy content, as we've seen, but I think that we can use these tools that we have in order to make our hobby better, make the people in our hobby better. And that learning can be entertaining and educational at the same time. I think that Matt and I tend to be a little goofy, when we record our podcast, but we do that just so that it's not so dry and that people don't feel uncomfortable. And, if you feel like you're just kind of sitting around and we're just kind of BS, and that's what we're going for. It's not a formal education. It's not a classroom, and it's certainly not a lecture. So now that my lecture is done, does anybody have any questions?
I'm working on it. All right, if you are on Zoom, just click that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and send them in. I'm going to take down the PowerPoint here. All righty, there we go. And while we're waiting on those, are there any questions from within the room?
I really like the music clips you have on there. Can you talk about where those come from and how that gets put together?
Okay, so you're talking about the stuff that we used in the past, or the stuff that we're using currently?
It's like the current stuff.
Okay, so the current stuff, we actually hired a big voice guy, and it's like you give them the script and you tell them what you want, and they'll say virtually anything that you want. In the past, what we had done, we got some free use music to use, because you have to be really careful with what you play on the internet, because copyright violation is a problem. So just be really careful with music and with other content like that. We used to use a friend of mine as a musician, and we used his music, and he was more than happy to let us use it. We were more than happy to use it.
Okay.
Ernesto Aguilar, what are your future plans for the podcast? Or to fire all the interns. Thank you for your question, Ernesto. Future plans for the podcast are that we're going to continue to grow. We have some things in the works. We are working with different content creators. We're trying to figure out ways to collaborate, to bring more people together, and to make this a bigger project, a broader swath. And anything that furthers us expanding and gaining more momentum, that's where we're at.
All right. Then nothing else on Zoom at the moment. Anything else from within the room? Nope. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. If anyone online has any last minute questions, go ahead and send them in, and I'll come back to them at the end. You beat me to it. You can't sit down yet. I'm sorry.
It's like work. As soon as I get around to my chair, that's when somebody knocks on the door.
So sorry.
No, it's okay.
What are your biggest challenges?
Biggest challenges. Biggest challenges, I think, are copyright. Challenges are people's indifference and trying to create just our own unique voice, I think, is the biggest challenge, because differentiating yourself in a crowd of people that are screaming can be difficult, especially when you're trying to be the guy that everybody's, you're trying to be the cool kid, you're trying to be the funny kid, and you just know. So I think that's it. I think grabbing people's attention, getting them in, getting them to share is it. But once they start to share, and I'm starting to see this more and more with the show. So as I walked through Central States this year, people were walking on, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" It hasn't. We've been doing this 13 years, and that really hasn't happened a whole lot up until this point, which means that the video is starting to get out there. People are really starting to watch. people are really starting to learn. So, that's it. We're just trying to find new and innovative ways to reach more people and bring more people in.
All
Oh,
right.
more.
What would you say have been the biggest successes of your podcast so far?
The fact that we're still here is a huge success. I'm not kidding you. It's like we started with nothing. We created this out of whole cloth. And it was just three nerds that got together that said, well, I think we could do something fun and it would be okay and entertaining. I think one of the biggest successes was when we did our show from the World's Fair of Money, when the ANA recognized us and said, hey, we'd like you to come in. Also to say, Newman Numismatic Portal coming to us and saying, hey, we'd really like to have you come and do our symposium. That to us was a huge honor. It was really neat that somebody thought enough of what we're doing. Anytime. Oh, and somebody walked up to me today on the floor and said, you know what? Your podcast got me through some really tough times when I was in a bad job and I didn't like what I was doing every day. The guy's a coin dealer now. So I won't take the blame for that. But if that happens once in your life, that's payment enough. That is it right there. If you helped another human being get through their life. And the last one, how much time do you spend on this per week? Okay, so this is where I'm kind of different from a lot of people because I do two podcasts. I'm constantly recruiting and I have a job in the business. So I think on the actual podcast stuff, I probably spend like 3 to 4 hours a week. I have to research. I look for news stories that are interesting to people, and then I write a little stuff on them. Then we just try and think of something that we can talk about that's interesting and do a little bit of basic research on that. And then trying to find a cool thing to pass across my desk so that we can have our contest at the end. That's where most of my time gets spent. And then it's usually an hour to an hour and a half of recording it. We don't edit it. We just leave it in its glory and send it up the way it is. And I do probably less with Aaron and the Ancient Coin podcast. But 3-4 hours a week, it really doesn't take that much if you're consistent about it and you really want to get it done.
Okay. Then that's all we have in here for now. So we'll open it up to the room again. Spend a minute. Nothing new has come up. Okay.
Cool.
Okay. So one more time, if you do have any other questions online, go ahead and enter them and we'll come back to them at the end or in 2 seconds if you get them in before I've started. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. We have been very happy to have you all as part of this NNP Symposium. Everyone who is registered, you will be receiving an email in the next few days with a link to a survey. Since we did try some new things this year, we're hoping to get some good feedback from those surveys. So if you don't mind helping us out and taking a look at that, it would be appreciated. Otherwise, all of these are being recorded. I assume you know that by now, but they will be up in about 2 weeks from today. If you are registered, you will get an email about that when they go up. There will also be an announcement on our website and social media. And I believe everyone here already knows my spiel about registering if you want the email. So I won't say it again. All right. We do have a new question.
Cool.
I use an Apple app called Pocket Casts. It doesn't find the Ancient Coin podcast. Google shows AC podcast on YouTube. Are you only on YouTube?
Okay. So the Ancient Coin podcast is a little bit different. We don't do it as an audio only podcast. So you won't find it when you search podcasts. If you go to the Harlan Burke website, it is on the Harlan Burke website at hjbltd.com. Or you can search YouTube and that's where we publish it. So it's on Aaron Burke's YouTube page. It is on, if you just search YouTube for Ancient Coin Podcast, that's done.
Right. But the Coin Show podcast should be on any of the podcasts.
Coin Show podcast, it's like if you swing a dead cat, you'll find it.
We're not recommending that you swing dead cats. All right, and that is the last one. That's going to wrap us up. Thank you, everyone who's tuned in online and come in person in Schaumburg. We hope to see you back at the next NNP Symposium. Thank you.